Okay, hello everyone. It's Marina and I am back with another video. This will be my most controversial video maybe since I made a video about child support a few years ago. Actually, it was more than 10 years ago, I think. And I don't know what happened to that video. Maybe I'll pull it up. It got a lot of, well, anyway. Um, the question that I want to ask, and it really is a question that I'm asking, it's not a comment or a declaration, or it's not even an answer, but it's a question that I want to pose, and then I want to make some arguments for it. I don't think this video will be very long, but I really am hoping that people will share it and give me their feedback and comments on this video, because this is something that I think we're facing right now in our country. It's a pivotal moment. And the question is, should women lead men? And I know that just saying it like that is a very sort of broad, sweeping statement. But I'm hearing a lot of people talk about, oh, there's these men and they won't vote for Kamala because she's a woman. And the question is it because she's a woman, or is it because they perceive her as being a weak person, a weak woman, or an incompetent or dishonest woman? And as I started to dig into that, I started to ask the question, well, what if she was a strong woman? What if she was a competent woman, a smart woman? Would she be someone that should be voted for as president of the United States, meaning that she would be the leader of this country, potentially a leader on the world stage, and that she would be leading both men and women. And, I started to think about this because I remember one time, a long time ago, I was having a conversation with my mother, and she told me, and I don't know whether she meant this or whether she actually ever faced this, but she said that she would not ride on an airplane if the pilot was a female, if there was a female pilot. I laughed at the time. I thought it was pretty funny. Although looking back, I kind of shudder that any person who is less than competent would be in a role like that, regardless of their gender. At the time, it just never would have occurred to me that there would ever be any such thing. And I had a couple of dates once with a guy who was a pilot. And I had asked him questions about, what that's like being, because, it's one thing to drive a car, drive a bus. There's much less that you're in control of, even the pilot is in control of in an airplane, than in a ground, on a ground transport. So you can't control gravity. All of the sort of dynamics of physics that go into that, speed, weight, time, distance, all of those things are when you can just crash to the ground, when gravity becomes a part of that, not just sort of speed and force. There's a lot of dynamics. And I was asking him questions about, their drug testing and how do you make sure that you're doing things in a safe manner? What's it like to have all of these people's lives in your hands every time you fly? And one of the things that he told me was that he would not go up. He was a commercial pilot, by the way. He would not go up with someone that he didn't trust, that he felt like, if he is in the cockpit and, he's got a co-pilot there. I think he was a co-pilot. He wasn't captain yet, but he was saying that if he was with someone and he felt like that captain was intoxicated or too tired or wasn't fit to go up, that he wouldn't go up with him. And this is something that I had never thought about. And, this is a very, very long time ago, so probably talking 25 years, that having a conversation about what it's like to, and he had never faced this, but if you're in a situation faced with a situation where you have to refuse to go up. But anyway, a little distraction there. So when I started to ask the question, well, should women lead men? You could look at this from a religious perspective, or you could look at from a practical perspective in terms of the personalities of men and women. And the question I kind of started to ask myself is this a natural order of things? I've been in leadership roles before in my life when I worked in the corporate world. I did work in human resources, so there wasn't a ton of men in human resources in general. But I did have situations and times where I did have men that worked for me. It wasn't problematic for me, and I thought I was a good leader. Um, and I thought, okay, maybe I was a good leader. Maybe there are plenty of women who are good leaders, great leaders. But how do we know that that's as good as it gets? For any role that I was in, where I'm in a leadership role or any woman is in a leadership role, how do we know that we are the best possible leadership that it should that could happen or could occur in that situation? I know I'm kind of talking in abstract, but just kind of go with it here. If there's one thing that I have noticed over the course of my life, as I am in leadership roles, there's been many leadership roles that I have fallen into that I would have rather not be in. I had a case once. I've mentioned the William Palmer case, and like I said, I'm going to make a whole video on the William Palmer case because it was really quite extraordinary. A legal case that I was working on. He had his house stolen through probate court. And as I was working on this, all of the other parties that were involved in this case were men. Mr. Palmer, male. His two partners that I was working with on the case was a male. The two people that were involved in the buying of the house were male. So everyone that I needed to try to work with in this situation, they were all men. And I actually continually tried to step back from this case because I felt like you men ought to get together and handle this. You guys ought to get together and work this out. And I was continually trying to step back from the situation. And every time I would step back, it would just fall apart. Either nothing would happen or something would go terribly wrong. And I can't really tell you why that happened. There are, I did get to know them all relatively well. There are some who I would do business with that I, trust in a business role, in a leadership role. And there are some in that situation who I wouldn't. But either way, I found, at one point I actually said, why don't you men get together and handle this and let me step out of it? And it seemed like I wasn't able to make that happen in this particular situation. And it frustrated me because I didn't feel comfortable being in that leadership role. And I also felt like there were skills that were needed in this particular case, in this situation, that I thought would be better handled by them. And I still believe that that's how it should have been. And so, I feel like I am a good leader, but that was kind of around the time in my life when I was starting to question whether or not women should be leading men. So where am I going with this? If women don't make the best, and maybe there are many, many roles where women are the proper person, if you want to call it a leader, a teacher. I do have a general belief that nurturing is something that's more suited to women just instinctively or biologically. That doesn't mean that they can't do great at other things, but I think that many people would agree, most people at this point, I think, would agree that if you're, for example, a single mother, which I guess I kind of was, I'll get into that more later. If you're a single mother, you could do a great job of raising your child or your children, but that doesn't substitute for them not having a father. There will always be some things missing. And I know that people would agree if you put it the other way around, that if you're a single father, even though there are far fewer of them, they do exist. They can do the best that they can to nurture their children, but it won't take the place of them having a mother. So I think that most people will now agree that there is some benefit to those things. And so if there is, let's say that it's just naturally uncomfortable for men to follow women, to have a woman as their leader. What if that's biologically and instinctively uncomfortable for them, but they feel like they don't have a choice? What kind of cognitive dissonance does that cause? Now, don't even get me started on what men need to do to learn to be effective leaders. I do believe that society has taken us down the road of destroying people's natural instincts, destroying their natural tendencies, and destroying those things about them that actually make society run the best. And then instead of us saying, well, maybe we need to take a step back from doing things in a certain way because it's not working, we double down and just say, well, we have to do it harder. Well, if women who are single parents are struggling to raise kids in the way that we want them to be raised and to be in society the way we want them to be, we just need to support single parenthood even more, single motherhood even more. And I mean, at some point you have to not double down on something that hasn't been a great success. And I don't want to make this all about single parenthood. That's definitely not what I'm trying to do. However, I am getting somewhere here. So if you guys would just go with me. If you've got women who are falling into leadership roles, very much like I did in the Palmer case, where they would not necessarily have put themselves in that role, but they did because they felt like, well, I'm just trying to step up to do what needs to be done. And then you have men who don't know what else to do, but their natural instinct inside creates resentment and bitterness because they're being led by a woman. And of course, what we've defaulted to is just to ridicule men for feeling that way. But if you start ridiculing people for their instincts, things that are natural biological instincts, I think that that's a bad road to be going down. And I think we're seeing the results of that to a certain extent with kind of the talk about toxic masculinity and things like that, where it's like there's a way to be masculine and not be toxic. And I think that actually toxic masculinity is a result of not having a proper outlet for not toxic masculinity. We've repressed it. It's like anything else that you inappropriately repress. It will manifest itself in negative ways. We've seen that with, all kinds of different things that we try to repress that are natural instincts. So if I find myself in a situation where I feel like I have to step up and take a lead role in this particular situation because I don't have any other choice. And that's the story of my life. I haven't talked about it much, but I've never been married, and I had a relatively successful career, but it wasn't my first choice to just be a career woman. My first choice was to get married and be a wife, and that didn't end up happening. Hopefully it still will, but it didn't end up happening. So I just kind of felt like, well, I can't not take care of myself and not take care of my basic needs and the needs of my life. And this was long before I even became a mother. I'm like, I just have to handle my business until things turn out differently. But that wasn't my first choice. That wasn't my first choice. It was just something that I kind of fell into out of not having another option. But I do believe that over time, my career girl lifestyle, I guess if you want to call it that, interfered with me having a relationship with the kind of man that I would want to be with, because I became a full-blown career woman. I worked very hard. I worked long hours. I did all of the things that you normally associate with someone who's career first, but that wasn't my desire to have career first. It was just something that ended up happening because I needed to just make sure that I was able to take, one of the things about, and I think that you people who are single will identify with this, and maybe some married people too, I don't know. Again, tell me in the comments, that when you are solely responsible for taking care of yourself and taking care of what you need, it is a much different pressure than having a partner in that. Someone who is a backup. Sure, if you have a 2-income household and one person loses their job, it's tough. There's no question that that's very tough. But imagine if you're a single income household and you lose your job. That's way tougher. And so that's kind of what's in the back of your mind, or at least that was what was in the back of my mind as a career woman, just trying to make sure that I had some savings, that I had a backup. And in a separate video, I will talk about why that came crashing down on me in my 40s and why I am so glad that I was to a certain extent very frugal, because I got to a point where I was too sick to work. And had I not been looking out for all of the all of the things that I need to do in terms of securing myself. And I didn't expect that. I did not expect to be, in my 40s and barely able to get out of bed. But I had planned for any number of things happening. And so I was able to make it through that. So here's my big closing argument about women leading men. I think myself to be a pretty good leader. In the things that I've taken a leadership role, I've done a good job of team building. As I was successful as a manager in the corporate world, particularly with the people who worked under me. Some people told me that I didn't manage upwards very good. I was good with people that worked under me, but I was not good, like sort of kissing. I was never disrespectful. I was very respectful to those people who were over me, my bosses, but I always would speak my mind and bring whatever information I thought was best for the job, for the company. I was always very open about sharing that and having a dialogue about it. I don't think I was disrespectful. But at the same time, I was one of those managers that people felt like they could come to, they could talk to, they felt like they could get an honest perspective from me. They felt like they could get honest guidance from me. And this is what they told me. So I believe that I was a good leader. But what if a woman who feels like, okay, I am a good leader, I'm a great leader, I can lead men and women. What if we would be better off and the world would be better off if we were there supporting men in our lives, or those men who are natural leaders that need the support of a woman by their side? Now, I know it's become very, very PC for both men and women to claim that they don't need this, but I'm not talking about what we've been taught to believe one way or the other. I'm talking about things that we should consider in terms of making society run and operate better that maybe we haven't done in a long time. I know a lot of men who seem to have the skills and the ability and the sort of natural leadership qualities, but they have a woman who is clingy, needy, and drags him down from his leadership responsibilities to suck him in and make him hers. And I speak about this as a person who came from parents who were like that. I mean, I believe that my dad was a great leader. He was a pastor, he was a builder, but I do feel like, everybody has their journey and their path. And maybe this was for me to see and me to learn from, that my mother kept him from being able to do all of the things that he otherwise would have done, because he was so busy being isolated by her and her needs and her illnesses and her sort of, her attempt to keep him all to herself. If you've ever known a man who is a type A personality that works long hours, and you are a woman and you're like, why don't you spend any time with me? I need for us to spend time together. One of the things that I know about, again, I'm telling you guys what I think or what I believe because it's my channel, but I'm really curious to hear your feedback, is that one of the ways that men show that they care about their family, their wife, their children, the people that they're responsible for, is by providing for them. So it just is it's not necessarily a connect for them if you're constantly saying you don't care about us because you don't spend time with us. You don't care about me because you don't spend time with me. For a man, the way that they're biologically wired, that may feel like a waste of time. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but I'm just saying that women are not taught to understand this. I have never known a man that was very successful that didn't work really, really hard. There may be some, I don't know, but I mean, even people that I know who inherited money or things like that, they still had to work hard. Otherwise, they were just slowly getting poorer and poorer every day. So I guess the big anticlimactic point that I'm trying to make, or the question that I want to present, is if women who feel themselves to be excellent leaders, who would maybe be out there, running for president or running, there's a lot of different things that you can run for, that we're leaving our men who should be in those type of leadership positions without the proper type of support. I don't know if any of you have heard the term where it's like certain types of women who will get their tentacles into men. And I'm not insulting anybody, okay, guys? So bear with me. But that we have left the men who are natural leaders that need a strong woman, a thoughtful woman, who maybe thinks just because of the way society has presented it to us that our role should be out front. As a leader, that maybe we need to be sort of pulling the tentacles of the wrong type of woman out of those men. And those women, instead of trying to take the leadership role themselves, would be there as wives to those men who need the right kind of woman to support them. I don't know the answer to that question, but I know that I spent most of my adult life struggling to try to figure out how to be a feminine second sort of woman and not because I mean, obviously I didn't have to do it because I haven't done it, but that just seemed like the ideal role. And when I look at all of the problems and I look at the sort of very sinister agenda behind separating men and women so that we cannot come together as the type of teams and partnerships that I think makes things work best. And you could even go so far as to say the way that God intended. I'm starting to question things and I can't pull my punches on those questions. So I have to really put it out there the way that I see it. So based on what you've heard, I'm posing the question, should, generally speaking, and on a high level, should women be leading men, or should women be the sort of neck holding up the men that should be leading men so that they can be the best that they can be? Tough video, difficult to bring all my thoughts together. So I hope you guys understand what I'm saying, what I'm asking, and I hope that you like this video. If you do, please click the like button, share this content, ask other people this question in your day-to-day life, and I will see you on the next video.